a bass player famous in Ascona. You came several times, jam a lot.
Sure.
And you're gonna play this year with Bria Skonberg. You are a young trumpet player, and maybe we would like to know more about your your musical background. Where did you learn music? In music school, music conservatorium? Are you from a musician family? So who want to start?
All right, I'll start. Thanks for coming and hanging with us this afternoon. I grew up in a sort of a musical family. My parents listened to classical music all day and all night, very loudly. So every time I came home from school, there was classical music blasting, the whole house. So you could hear it way up the street. So I grew up with an appreciation for music, particularly classical music. Then later on, jazz. My older sister introduced me to jazz. And I grew up in a country town in Australia. I acquired some records. I listened a lot. And my sister had this band. And I played classical flute, I played a little classical piano. And my sister had a band and she says, I need a bass player. I said, bass player? I'd never touched a bass, I was a teenager. And there was one at school, so I just took it home. I just took the bass from school.
I started playing the trumpet in 7th grade when I was just about 12. Played a little piano before. I have an older brother and an older sister. He played saxophone and fiddle. My sister played flute and piano. My parents are teachers of school, but just love music and love dancing, and so it's always a really fun environment. But through the Dixieland Festival in Chilliwack, I really got to see firsthand live musicians playing classic jazz. So it wasn't just listening to the recordings, it was really seeing people play it and getting a feel for that energy and that wonderful sense of it. And like Nicki said, I was sponsored to go to a music camp in California when I was 16. Now, I was a student for a few years at this camp in the summer, then a counselor, I helped the teachers, and now in a few weeks, I'll go there for my 3rd year as a teacher. I'm a faculty member at the camp in Sacramento, and it's lots of fun. So I really believe that whole system between schools, good festivals, good jazz societies like this, supporting youth musicians, that I'm really a product of those sort of things. I decided, with some help from some teachers, to go into music at Capilano University in Vancouver. It's about an hour and a half away from Chilliwack, so that was a big move when I was 17. And got my degree in jazz instrumental performance. Spent the next 5 years playing around the world, organizing bands, and I stayed in Vancouver to see the Winter Olympics in 2010, which was incredible. Lots of people from all over the world coming together, and lots of really nice musical opportunities. Trying to feel where my next move would be, and of all the places I went, New York seemed to have the most cultural diversity, really interesting, creative, musical energy, obviously extremely inspiring people like Nicki, and also Warren Bachet, who's here. I really wanted to study trumpet with him, so I go to his house a couple of times a month to take trumpet lessons. And here we are today in beautiful Ascona for my first time. It's just amazing.
So, Nicki, you play with your sister, but who are your principal influence or your master? Who influenced you the most?
There's a huge list, and it's, I think you like different bass players, also different vocalists, because we both sing, and for different reasons, I studied a little bit with Ray Brown when he came to Sydney, I used to call his hotel room and, can I get a lesson? He used to give up his golf game to give me a lesson. So, of course, Ray Brown. And before that, Paul Chambers and Oscar Pettiford, and there's so many bass players that I've listened to over the years, and I like this about that person, I like that about, you know. So you listen to everybody, and you steal from the best. I mean, you do steal their stuff, I mean, of course. and same with singers, there's different things I like about different singers. I think the more you listen, not only to jazz, but to everything, you develop your style from listening to a lot of different people, you know. And of course you have your favorites you'll go back to. There's people I always go back to, you know. There's so many, it's a huge list at this point. But there's, everyone has something to offer. It's very true.
Of course, I have many favorite trumpet players, musicians of the classic eras, you know, like Louis Armstrong and Charlie Shavers, and the list goes on. Again, when you're a teenager getting into the music, the biggest impressions on you are from live people that you can see play. And at the Chilliwack Dixieland Jazz Festival, when I was in 10th grade, a band from Australia called the Fireworks Jazz Band came over, featuring a cornet player named Simon Stribling. I don't know if any of you know him. He came over to the festival that year, he fell in love with a Canadian, and he moved to Canada, and he became my most direct mentor for the next 8 years, Simon Stribling, and I have a large love for Australians. I think this festival does too, the Australians and Sebastian and Dave Blankers and everybody. But he was somebody who had the most profound impact on me at the start, not just as a musician, but as an enthusiast for life and good quality of life and living. So him, that was very important. And then of course Louis Armstrong, Charlie Shavers. I love Ruby Braff, and lots of singers. Anita O'Day, I think, is my favorite with her phrasing and her sound. Like you say, I mean, and I listen to so much more than just jazz. I think that's really, really important in these days to be a well-rounded musician and human being, because why not? We have the internet, we have every style of music, every culture of music at our fingertips, to our ears, so I take advantage of that.
Have you been to, this festival is dedicated to the music of New Orleans. Have you been to New Orleans? And
of course, yeah. I haven't been post-Katrina. It's funny we say pre-Katrina, post-Katrina. I haven't been post-Katrina. But I went a couple of times before that, and it's a great city. It's a great city. And there's always been good music there. I'm glad it's still there. I really am.
Yes, I've been to New Orleans twice, never before Katrina, only after. Went for Mardi Gras. And then the Heritage Festival a couple of years ago, I played with Banu Gibson, a wonderful vocalist, and Bucky Pizzarelli was there too. It was one of a few places, like New York, that I walked around and thought, you know, I could do this every day. In New Orleans, they just think, one of their slogans is, it's not that we don't care, it's just that we don't care that much, you know? They take things seriously, but not too seriously. They relax, and I appreciate that.
And this year the festival is dedicated also to the ladies. And you mentioned that you went to camp, and I would like to know, since the last maybe 10 years or maybe 20 years, we have more lady musicians, I mean professional musicians.
Yeah.
And do you think that it will help a lot that we have now jazz class in school or conservatorium?
Well, I think growing up when I was 18 or 19, and I moved from this small town in Australia to Sydney, I didn't know there weren't many women doing this. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I sort of moved to Sydney and thought I'd be just meeting a whole lot of women playing music, and there really weren't back in those days. And now there's just so many. I mean, it's incredible. I forgot the question. Anyway. Yeah, there's just this, I don't know, I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful when you have really talented people coming up all the time that happen to be women. I'm psyched about that. I don't know why the reason is, because there's always been conservatorium and university courses. I don't know how that changed, I really don't, but I'm glad it changed.
But the jazz class are new. I mean, 30 years ago, we didn't learn jazz in music school or something.
Yeah, I have two schools of thought about the whole education thing. Well, I learned a lot going to the conservatorium. I think I learned more, to be honest, on gigs. Most of what I think I know about playing the bass and about jazz and everything came from just learning the hard way. I'd go on gigs when I was 19 and someone would call tunes and I'm like, I don't know it. And they'd be like, well, go home and learn it. So I sort of learned the hard way, you know what I mean? It was like, you know, that was the tough school. I didn't really learn that going to the conservatorium. I might have learned what's in a D-7 going to school, but I didn't really know how to apply the D-7 until I got on the bandstand. So I'm sort of old school in that way. I think you learn a lot on the bandstand.
I think a lot of like she said, it's never seemed strange to me that there's a lot of women playing this music. All the classes I've been in have had a fair amount of females, but largely in part because of, you know, the generations of women before mine that have really paved the way. And also, again, the use of the internet, I think, has just blown the doors off of everything. I mean, I knew about Gunhild Carling. I've known about her for maybe about eight years or so, before I had even met her. Simon told me about Gunhild, and I've been watching her videos, and she'll be here in a few days. She's incredible. I think having, again, you know, the internet and that kind of awareness, and a couple of real trailblazing women that have opened the doors for all of us, make it so that I don't think twice about it at this point. And yeah.
How did you meet together?
That was our first gig. I don't know. We haven't known each other this long, actually, but it is before you moved to New York.
Maybe Arizona, like when my band.
That's right.
With the Jazz Pilots?
Okay, so 3 years ago?
Maybe more. I don't think I've done it.
Okay, 4 years ago, I was invited to the Arizona Classic Jazz Party. Bria was there with the band. Who were you there
I
with?
think my Big Bang jazz band. It's either them or Mighty Aphrodite.
Yeah. So Bria was there with the band, and I was there with the band. And I heard her, and I was like, wow, she's great. And then you came to one of my gigs, and you were in the audience, and I invited you up to play, and we did a very long jam on Waltzing Matilda.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, I remember that.
It was phenomenal, and she had never heard the tune before. And goes to show if you're really talented, you can get up on stage and I sort of hear how this tune goes, and then play a great solo, which you did. So, yeah.
I remember hearing about Nicki so much. Everybody, of course, we love her. We talk about her. She's a phenomenal player and she's a phenomenal person. She had never met me before, and you know, having a young girl come up and play an instrument, and she just opens her arms and says, "Come on, let's play," and that takes an immense amount of confidence from everybody to allow that, and she just sets this great example. So I definitely was glad to cross paths there. And then I had to move to New York to follow her too, so we can hang out more often. And then she moved to Connecticut, but that's another story.
Yeah, that's another story.
What will you play tomorrow? What did you compose some new tune, or what did you prepare?
Are we playing tomorrow?
I'm here now.
Funny enough, we had one rehearsal. We had a gig together in Washington, D.C. A few weeks ago before Ascona. And we talked on the drive back to New York about what we were going to do. So that was our first rehearsal in the car. Our second rehearsal was on Skype.
Yeah.
It's hard to rehearse on Skype.
There's a delay.
Yeah.
The sound.
So we kind of, our real rehearsal was here.
Yeah.
And we've discovered that we actually do sing and play a lot of the same tunes. So there's a lot of stuff that we haven't even uncovered yet. So it's kind of exciting.
And could you, is that so difficult to be a woman and a jazz musician, or I don't think it's not a real subject?
I think being a woman is very hard.
It's much easier to be a man.
Life was a lot easier when I was a man, but now it's difficult.
You know what it is, I think, in music these days, black, white, male or female. You've got to be dedicated and you've got to have something to offer. It doesn't really matter anymore, you know what I mean? I think there's no barriers. It's like, if you get out there and you have something to offer and you're a good musician, there you go. That's kind of it. That's what you need.
And I would just add that, a lot of people think, if you're a young woman and you get a lot of attention, or maybe it's easier in some ways, but I find that as motivation to want to try extra hard, you have to play even better to really prove yourself. And I don't always, we don't care so much always about the opinions of a lot of critics or people. We care about the opinions of the musicians in the band, what they think. If I could just, I think that in our situation, getting attention is easy, but keeping attention is hard. That's when it really comes down to the music, and so that's what I'm working towards.
That's good.
So, and maybe what you came several times in Ascona.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah,
It's great.
And what did you like from this festival?
I think it's more what's not to like. I mean, there's everything here. There's great music. I mean, a lot of friends, a lot of new friends. Always meet new people here. That's what I love. And I mean, the Australians, they crack me up. I mean, I haven't lived in Australia for nearly 20 years, but I come to Switzerland to play with friends I played with 20 years ago. It's kind of bizarre, but in a really lovely way. So every day is a mystery here, but in a really nice way. I like that they change the sets up, so you do get to play with different musicians. It's what's not to like, It's really lovely.
Maybe, do you have some question or no?
Too late.
Do you remember your concert at Lübeck?
Where?
In Lübeck, in Germany, 2nd of May.
Lübeck.
Lübeck.
Wow.
This year?
Lübeck with a transatlantic quintet.
Yes.
With
Engelbert Robel and Eddie Erickson.
Oh no.
Yes, and it was a great tour. Do I remember that gig?
in the old cellar.
Yes, I think I do. No, it's so much. I mean, that was a tour where we were going. It does kind of blend into one big gig after a while, but.
And I didn't know you before this concert.
Oh.
I didn't know nothing from you.
Well, I'm glad to meet you. And thank you. Thanks for coming to Ascona.
Welcome to the family.
After the concert, I asked you something from New York. The jazz group, Iridium.
Oh yeah.
I've been in New York 5 years ago,
Yep.
and we bought tickets for Mamma Mia.
Oh, Mama. Okay, which is
That's
next
Yeah,
door.
it's next door.
Yep.
And then we were interested in the jazz branch, but I didn't know that you were played with Les Paul. Now, when I was younger, Les Paul was out of my interest. I myself played in a jazz band. I can't play trumpet too today.
Well,
And I didn't know that you have been with that. And
I just sort of fell into that gig. It's very, it was, I had 10 years with Les Paul every Monday night at the Iridium. And it was very funny because I just went and sat in like you do as a musician. You sit in on people's gigs, you have to get out there. That's the name of the game,
Say yes.
So I sat in one night and what he did actually was, there was three of us. There was I was playing with these other 2 guitar players at the time, so we had a group. So the 3 of us sat in, and then he looked around and he said, okay, you guys can get off the stand, but leave the girl up here. And I'm like, oh, you know. So he called a bunch of tunes, I knew most of them. And then at the end he made a really bad joke about women musicians or something. I mean, he said something pretty awful. And I came back with something, I don't know what I said, but it must have been awful too. But he sort of looked at me like, I think we have an act, you know, and then I started to fill in. And then one day he just fired the other bass player. It was kind of awkward, but it was 10 years of a really good gig. Not only for working with him and the stories, but who came to that gig. It was very interesting. It was all these rock guys and jazz people and celebrities, non-celebrities. So a mixture of crazy people used to come to that gig. So it was like 2 shows, one on stage and then one backstage that was even crazier. So good times. I wish I'd met you then, but that's okay.
My English is not very bad. I learned English at school 60 years ago.
Oh, no, it's great. It's all good.
Okay, I had a...
Wow. Wow.
Ja, wenn wir das schon haben, ziehen wir zurück.
Oh, wow. Wow, I don't know anybody here. That's interesting. That's you. No, that's not me. No. Ah, okay. Wow, that's great. Incredible. Wow. Amazing.
And very important was we had a flat near the Metropolitan Opera. One evening there was a great concert with Charles Mingus
Oh, gee.
in the Mansion.
In the Damrosch Park, yeah. Wow. Oh, that's beautiful.
That's I remember. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for showing me that. Yeah. It's great.
Nice to meet you here, and perhaps we will see you again.
Yeah, I
By
hope
another
so.
concert in Lübeck.
In Lubeck, for sure. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So you are both living in New York now?
Yeah, I actually moved a little bit above Connecticut, but close enough.
Okay. And is that difficult to be a jazz musician in New York? What is the jazz scene now in New York?
It's a very good question. There is a lack of venues. There is a lack of good venues that are very good to musicians and that can actually pay some money and to get a consistent good audience in New York. It's changed a bit. I actually don't play as much in New York. Maybe Bria could probably answer this question a bit better because Bria's out all the time playing in clubs in New York. I'm mostly on the road. It's really hard to say. I do work in New York, but not as much as I used to.
Yeah, it's tricky. I think being a musician these days anywhere, it's first and foremost about the music, but after that you have to be good at and diverse at a lot of different things. Maybe you want to teach, maybe you need to learn how to self-promote a lot. You know, there's a lot of things that go into being a full-time musician. I travel a lot to make ends meet. But there is a really, really neat thing happening, at least in New York and different places. There's a strong surgence of young people playing traditional and classic jazz. There's some great jam sessions that go all night until 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning on weeknights. And anytime you're in New York City, be sure to check them out. There is actually quite a neat movement happening right now. There's, you know, the idea of speakeasy bars and maybe burlesque dancing or vintage stuff has gotten really cool again. In this neat movement. So there seems to be a lot of traditional jazz there, but also, I mean, being a full-time musician, you have to be diverse. We play more than just swing. I mean, maybe you get your R&B or funk gig, or you play weddings, or you play private parties, or a little bit of everything. So I'm enjoying it immensely. I feel like New York, you get these windows into so many different lifestyles. I mean, you get to see so much and experience so many things through different people's eyes, and they welcome you into their homes and you see things. So the experience I feel rich from the experience, from all of it. So I think that's why I'm here to live right now. That's my priority.
Is that your first CD? Could you tell me?
Yeah, this is my second solo album. I've put out a lot of, I don't know, maybe 15 albums with my bands from the years past. This is my second solo album on a record label named Random Act Records. They donate 10% of their profits to a charity of my choosing, so that's the Jazz Foundation of America. What's neat about this CD is that it's a lot of original material. I'm doing more writing, a lot of it kind of in a traditional jazz style, or again, a mixture of all these different, maybe jazz, maybe funk, maybe pop, or world, lots of percussion. And if you happen to buy this, the CD itself is actually a DVD. If you put it in your CD player, a little video comes up, and there's Warren Bechet and I playing duets. You can watch a little video of that, so that's neat. Yeah, how about that? You can watch me get my butt kicked by Warren Bechet. That's great. Yes, and so having the support of a label, I was able to hire some wonderful musicians, like Wycliffe Gordon that's here, and clarinet player Victor Goines. Yeah.
The track with John Pizzarelli is great. She wrote a song and then had John Pizzarelli guest on it. It's very, very nice. That's my favorite track.
Well, thank you.
A lot of more traditional musicians compose their own music. Is that new?
No, I think, you know, even if you don't get to always play your original music, because you may not be with the same musicians to rehearse it. You know, I mean, original music, you kind of have to, you know, have it rehearsed almost to make it sound good. But, so, most musicians I know do compose, you know. And it's funny, I always have a couple of original songs that I take to the gig, and then if I'm feeling brave, I pull them out. But I have to feel comfortable, and it has to be the right setting and the right audience and the right everything. It just has to feel right to bring out original music. But I think it's very, very good to compose, you know. Yeah.
There's a clarinet player in New Orleans named Tim Laughlin. I don't know if any of you know him, and he did a CD a couple years ago of a lot of original music. And his line was, you know, if I'm going to play obscure music, it may as well be my own. So often, us jazz musicians are like, here's a song from 1921. Nobody's ever heard of it, and it's played by this band that nobody ever knew, and you found this gem, but I mean, you may as well write it or put your name on it. I don't know. That and the idea of public domain or writing your own songs, you don't pay licensing fees when you record and you put it on CD. So there are a couple different perks. One thing I found gratifying about writing was, again, like creating an own style, figuring out what kind of bubbles up and comes out. But I felt comfortable enough to do that at this point, having put more time into the classics, and I think getting that foundation, and I'm constantly still learning songs. I have so many to learn. I've learned at least 5 this week already. So.
Is that a new CD?
No, but it's, you know, the nice thing is that if you can find your niche somewhere, and it doesn't have to be New York, you know what I mean? Like I said, I hardly work in New York these days, but I record for a Japanese label. I think I'm doing, as soon as I get back, I'm going to record another record for them, and then that month after another. So this is one of many bass vocal CDs that I've been fortunate enough to do for this Japanese label, Venus Records. And then hopefully once a year, it's turning out to be that, I go to Japan and play some very nice concerts. But I think that's what it is these days. You know what I mean? If there are places where jazz lives, and if you can kind of get a foot in the door there, particularly Japan. Japan, they just love jazz in Japan. So, and they come to your gigs and they've got all your CDs and they want you to sign it. It's fantastic, you know, like Ascona.
And they like singer, no?
They like everything in Japan. They're very open. They're very, They're very open. It's great. Yeah.
And maybe more question from the public? Or?
May I ask you a question? Oh, you as a trumpet player, may I ask you a question? Have you ever had the chance to hear records by the trumpet player Rhoda Snow?
Yes, actually, I was listening to Rhoda Snow on my run yesterday. Anybody is familiar with her? She's an African-American jazz musician who was the female version of Louis Armstrong, and again, being a woman musician, didn't quite take on in the United States. She moved to Europe and was doing some concerts around there. She had a tour in Denmark, during the war, and she got held up in a Nazi camp for 2 years. And
Which is not true, actually.
It's not true?
Which is not true, actually.
No?
Really?
No. She was into drugs, and she was captured by the police, but she didn't want to say it,
Interesting.
you know.
Okay.
Wow, all these different stories about it.
That's interesting. Yeah, I heard recently that somebody is developing a show about her for Broadway. So, I mean, we all know sometimes history is just written by the people who want to make a good story. So we'll find out what really happened there. Thank you for sharing. No, she was tremendous. I mean, and the right person at the wrong time.
And she was a good singer.
Absolutely.
She was a very good dancer.
Absolutely. Yeah. The latest
Choreographer, everything.
Yeah, I agree. The music I've heard of her, she had hi-hat, trumpet, and rhythm, but not a lot of hit songs. From what I can hear of her music, I haven't heard like a really good song. She was extremely talented, but I don't know if she had the right hits, or I haven't found it yet, but I'm hoping to do more of her material in the years ahead.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you for asking.
When I look around, I don't think we are young public. But maybe two
Yes, you
questions.
are.
maybe two questions. Is it frustrating for such young people to play for an elder audience? And maybe serious, what do you think about the future for traditional jazz? And is there a difference in the different continents like Japan or the States or Europe?
It's a very good question. To be honest, I don't know the answer. I really don't. I think it's more diversified when I go to Japan. I think Japan has a younger, older mix audience. In France, there was actually a mix. I don't know the answer to that. I think about it though. I really do. You know, and I'm trying to find different ways to reach younger people. But I don't think I found that answer. It's a very, very good question. It's a very elusive question, you know. So maybe Bria has some thoughts on that, but that's a tough one for me. I don't really know the answer.
I don't know the answer.
Yeah.
Well, I would say, with all respect, I wouldn't use this festival as the model for it, because this is a gorgeous place. It's a resort. It's expensive. You know, young people, we don't have a lot of disposable income to go and do that sort of thing. So when I'm at a jazz club at night and there's a great beer hall in Brooklyn that plays traditional jazz 3 or 4 nights a week, and there's lots of young people that come out, they throw tips in it, they love it. They absolutely love it. There's different venues to have it. So just making, again, I feel like there is a little bit of a resurgence of young people getting into it, but it just depends on the venue.
Do you think they love the music or the beer?
Pardon?
Do you think they love the music or the beer? Come
It
there.
doesn't matter.
And what do you think about what we call today the new jazz? I mean, in France we call jazz what, for myself, I don't call jazz a music influence. It's just because there is improvisation. We call it jazz, but it's influenced by traditional music from I don't know, from Tunisian or Greek music. They change no 4 beat per bar, maybe 6 or 10. I don't know. What do you think? Can we call it jazz music? What do you think about?
Well, if you look at what they call jazz festivals around the world, it's changed a lot over the last however many years. Even since I've been going to festivals, they change. So under this banner of jazz, it can be anything from world music to funk to rock. I mean, you have Bon Jovi playing at the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival. I mean, you know what I mean? I hardly recognize any jazz names on some of the big festivals. You know, it's, and it is a business, you know, it is a business, and they have to get a lot of people. So, but it is interesting. But particularly, I think what exploded was the world music scene. Brazilian music and Latin music became all part of jazz. It's a wide palette now, the whole jazz banner.
I think, was it Lewis that said about jazz, I mean, or just music, it's like what we play is life. I think jazz greatly mirrors the human experience. It's freeing, it's freedom, and it doesn't, you know, whatever era it ends up being, I don't think we need to define it. Once you start to define something, you limit its possibilities. What is considered modern jazz now versus jazz at another time. I guess you can dissect that if you'd like to. But I think we just need to celebrate the fact that jazz can be so diverse and still have a huge umbrella and bring people together. I mean, let's not put a lot of borders around it. Let's just accept it all.
Duke Ellington said there's good music and the other kind, right?
Yeah.
Not good music.
Yeah.
And will you go to jam with modern musicians?
Never.
In France, there is a kind of competition. So I would like to know if it's the same in New York.
I don't know. I don't know much about the French jazz scene these days. I don't spend much time there. In fact, I used to tour France with a klezmer band, actually.
Oh yeah?
Oh yeah. All around France. This klezmer was very popular in France at the time. You know, if you have to be versatile, like Bria was saying, and if you like it, you seek it out. You know what I mean? And you jam, or you know, I have a fairly open mind with a lot of jazz, and some of it moves me and some of it doesn't. And I think that's the same for everybody, right? You know, you like this more than you like that, you know, and that's how it is.
Yeah, what people consider and label modern jazz is still 50 years old at this point. It's totally ridiculous to me. Jazz to me is people getting together and leaving their egos at the door and trying to make something in the moment based on what they share similarly or sharing with each other to create something new. And I don't, you know, whatever instrument you want to play, that's A-okay with me.
More questions from the audience?
I have a question for Nicki.
Yeah.
Do you travel with your own instrument, or do you get the bass and you
Oh boy. Oh boy. I don't know if you can see from here, I have a huge blister. You know, that's from playing basses around, you know, that's from not carrying my own bass. I have I have a travel bass, and I have a beautiful bass that won't leave my house because it's the only one that hasn't been damaged by the airlines. So it stays in the corner. You know, I don't get to play it enough. I love it, but I won't take it on an airplane. I love it too much to put it on an airplane, you know. So, and the travel bass comes with me when it has to. But honestly, if I can get a bass at the other end, it's 2 hours less of arguing with airline employees about putting it under the plane or having it inspected without, you know, so often they inspect it in the States, but they don't bother to put the latches back on the case. So you get it at the other end, and it might have one latch attached, the neck's broken off, the usual story. So I try to avoid it. I did it for many years, you know, and it sort of breaks it. Even though they're fixable, they never quite look the same. You see where the damage occurred. It's harder to sell in the end. So I'm going to start crying now. But anyway. So most of us are borrowing basses. unless they Sebastian bought 2 basses because he lives in France and I think he drove or took a train or something. But yeah, that has changed a lot over the years.
I know also a question for Nicki Parrott.
Yeah.
I've seen you a few times at the old church in Boswil, where some of your CDs were made. Do you miss these occasions as we do?
Yes, I'm hoping I was going to see George and Doris. Are they coming?
I don't know.
Do you think George and Doris are coming to the festival?
No,
George, Coran and Doris?
I don't know. I didn't see them.
Anyway.
They said they would come.
They said they would come? Okay,
Yes.
yeah. They're great people. There's so many lovely people that we meet that put on these concerts around the world. Very, very grateful. That was great. How many piano players?
Well, at the
10?
maximum it was 6.
Okay.
6 usually,
That's
5,
12
4.
hands, though. That's
6,
a lot.
It
6
sounded
on
like
the-
10 when you
on-
get 6
on-
really
on-
good piano
two
players.
Legrand.
Both have 2 hands.
Exactly.
So
That's what
it
it
means
is.
yes, you miss it too.
I do miss it.
Okay.
Yeah. And I mean, that's when you've been in the business a little while, the good gigs come and go, you know, and so you have great memories. It's on to the next thing. Yeah, it's life, right?
And do you know the musician you will play with today and tomorrow?
Yes, today I played with Ehud, who lives in New York, and we're kind of playing with the same people throughout the week. Dave Blankhorn, a fantastic guitarist from Australia, now lives in France. Nicki and Guillaume Nouveau, who I think you met just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
But I knew these guys. I did a couple of tours around Europe with a quintet named Trumpet Gumbo. I played with those guys, with Jerome Etcheverry too. So much like you, if you travel to different festivals, you see a lot of the same people. We see a lot of the same musicians. It's a really big international family. Really, you know, it's funny, whatever part of the world you go to, like you said, these little niches, even in different countries. Like, oh, do you know this person? Yeah, oh yeah, he's great. Do you know this person? Yeah, they're great. It's a small jazz world after all.
A big family.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
Yes. What do I like for breakfast?
Wrong audience.
Okay, I have a question. How many of you go to more than like 3 festivals a year? Wow, a few. Okay, how many just come to Ascona usually? How many first time in Ascona? Okay, 1. Okay, cool. All right, I'm done. Thank you.
Well, and I'll put you on the spot for those of you asking about the future of jazz and the traditional jazz, you know. Next time you come, please bring your kids and your grandkids. Please bring your families so that we can keep building an audience, and consequently, they'll maybe pick up some instruments and start some bands.